So I'm going to talk about arthritis and osteopathy. Um, let's talk about a particular case. I saw a guy a few weeks ago, and his name was Chaim. And Chaim was about 62. He had something called ankylosing spondylitis. And ankylosing spondylitis, or AS, is a kind of arthropathy. It's an arthritis that has a genetic influence to it. It mainly involves the spine, and like every other kind of arthritis, there's a kind of a breaking down of the joints. The joints don't function as well. They hurt. There's inflammation. Besides the joint, bones and cartilage itself getting dysfunctional, in ankylosing spondylitis, there can be a bridging of the actual joints where calcium gets laid down into that joint capsule that surrounds the joint, and that makes the joint unable to move. So they can get these really difficult, restricted motion problems that come from the joints not functioning, especially the joints of the low back and the pelvis. And Chaim was amazing. He's just like his name. He was full of life. The name Chaim means life. And Chaim was a really happy guy with what seemed to be a great marriage. He's in his 60s, but man, was he in pain. He came hobbling into my office. There's kind of a particular kind of waddle that people do, slightly bent over when they have bad ankylosing spondylitis. And Chaim really wanted medical cannabis. And while I work in a clinic in private practice where I do recommend that and people get their prescriptions that way, the place where I saw him is one of the health funds where we don't do that. And so that wasn't an option for Chaim, at least not through me, though I gave him some suggestions elsewhere. But the point was, I said, Chaim, why don't we look at the other part of the picture, because arthritis, pain, and dysfunction isn't just about the disease. There's also something called health. And how's your health? And let's talk about that. You may have heard me talk about 3 domains of health. There's kind of our mind, emotional, mental system, and our movement structural system, and then there's our biochemical metabolic system. And Chaim's mental emotional system was great. He was a happy guy. There was no anxiety, depression. This is the guy who got out of bed every morning and dragged himself to synagogue to pray, and kind of tried to do things with his kids and grandkids as best as he could. And he was staying engaged. A lot of people lose engagement, but Chaim was engaged in life, like his name says. So we focused a lot on structure. The metabolic biochemical thing's another story, but we focused in this visit on structure. And on exam, it really felt to me like the restrictions in his joints aren't hard restrictions. And what do I mean by that? The joint's got movement to it. There's a capsule. There's muscles and ligaments and tissues all around it. When there's arthritic changes in a joint, it's not just the joint, it's all those tissues as well. Sometimes when people have limited range of motion, it's because, especially in AS, there can be spondylosis. There can be like calcium and fusing of the joint. And his joints were stiff, but there was still play. There was movement, and it was palpable. So I did a bunch of osteopathic treatment, and what does that mean? People hear osteo, they think bone, and for sure that's one aspect of osteopathic manipulation, is working on alignment. But there's another aspect, which is working with soft tissue, working with neuromuscular responses, and then more subtle techniques that work with what we call the fluid. And that's the fluid inside the joints, and it's the fluid flow that's moving through the body all the time. Our body's an integrated system. It's one unit. You start as one cell and then become 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 3 trillion cells. All those cells are talking to each other. There's incredible communication going on. Every bit of you knows every other bit of you. Part of what we do in the biodynamic model of osteopathy, which is part of what I practice, is really looking at the whole and looking at the fluidity and seeing how everything's connected to everything else, and working with that and sensing what we call the health, which is a vitality that's moving through the body, and finding the places where it's restricted, and through very gentle techniques of balancing ligaments, membranes, tissues, muscles, and joint, we allow fluid flow to happen. We allow the body's natural function to reestablish itself. The bottom line of what happens from that tends to be the joints and the tissues feel more free. But it also evokes some profound central nervous system changes, stimulates vagal tone and relaxation. There's been various studies looking at its effect on inflammation, showing that it reduces inflammation. And for sure, in most of my patients, it creates a profound sense of well-being. So Chaim came in, waddling, horrible in pain. We did this treatment for about 30 minutes, and it was so gratifying because he like popped off the bed like something new was going on for him. He's like, "Doctor, I feel great." And like that's not the end of the road for him. That was one treatment. It was a start. It was starting to get him moving. He needs to do certain exercises that are really important for anyone with arthritis, but especially ankylosing spondylitis. And we need to work on the nutritional toxicity aspect of things, because you can always ask what's driving inflammation, and are there things that are nutritional or otherwise that can reduce inflammation. So like anything else, there's a big picture. There's health and there's disease. There's a lot we can do to stimulate the health, and osteopathy is part of that. So that's what we did with Chaim, and I'll talk more about these things as time goes by. If you like this video and you want to get notified of new videos, one thing you can do is go to the Facebook group called What Heals, that's WHATHEALS, and join. And that way you'll get notified when I post new postings like this. You can go to my website at www.drschiller.com, drschiller.com. And if you like this video, please share it with your friends, either by sending it to them directly or posting it or sharing it on groups where you think people will appreciate it. And I'm here to provide inspiration and ideas about what you can do to help improve your state of health and enhance your life despite having chronic illness and chronic pain. So thanks for being with me, and I look forward to more.